What is good, YouTube? With Warzone 2 finally out, I know a lot of you guys will have a lot of questions about the settings in this game because there is a lot of them. The purpose of this video is to basically walk you guys through it, try and explain as much as I can and give you my recommended settings. Let's get into it. I'm a controller player, so keyboard and mouse is something I won't be able to help you with, so I'm going to skip that step and go straight to controller. So these are my controller settings. If you guys watch my Modern Warfare 2 video, they're very similar to that, so I'm just going to scroll through it, and if anything sticks out, I'll try and make sure I highlight that. But if you guys are interested in my controller settings, I did go through them in more depth in my older video, and I'll link that below. So I play tactical flipped, controller vibration off. I've always turned it off because I feel like it distracts you when you're shooting people, so that's off. Trigger effect off because I'm a competitive player and that's just not really needed for me. If you guys are interested in realism and stuff like that, maybe try it on and see how you like it, but for me it's off. I play on 5.5 sensitivity. These are the multipliers, but they're not really all that relevant. I don't play third person, ground vehicles, it's not really noticeable. I don't know, you guys will just have to mess about with this because sensitivity settings are usually a lot of personal preference. I've left all these on default. And down sight behavior hold. I also play with auto attack sprint on. It's just something I got used to over Warzone last year, so I recommend having it on. It also helps your controllers, so you don't go through a lot of controllers, because before this, you can't see you have to press down your left stick to sprint, so this you just move your stick forward and you start auto attack sprinting, so I'd recommend this setting on. I'd also put interact/reload behavior to prioritize interact, and that'll basically make it like the previous Warzone, where you just press square to interact with objects and then square to reload. Then the advanced tab, target aim assist on, you know, as control players, cheaters, so you make sure you have that on. Aim assist type, I've used default. Apparently Black Ops was really good, and then with the recent update they've nerfed it, so it was recommended to go back to default anyway. I was using this from the start on Modern Warfare 2, so I wouldn't really notice difference, but yeah, go back to default if you are using Black Ops. Gyro behavior, again, this is something I don't use because I'm a competitive player on Warzone, so this is irrelevant to me, but if it's something you'd like to mess about with, go ahead, but for me it's off. Aim response curve type, we have that on dynamic. I've always felt like dynamic gives you the extra precision at longer ranges, so it helps you be a lot more accurate. Obviously hitting your shots, killing people, that's what you want, so I'd recommend dynamic. Again, if you're more comfortable with standard, use standard. If you're more comfortable with linear, use linear, but for me it's dynamic. And these are my zoom sensitivity, so I play on 5.5. My low zoom is 0.92, 2 to 3 times 0.92, the 4 to 5 is 0.95, and the rest of these are on 1. I would maybe up this one slightly, so when you're using a sniper scope you can be slightly more accurate because obviously it's a lot more zoomed in. Input dead zones, this is an important one. Make sure you lower these down to the point where you don't get stick drift, and it just makes your controller feel way more responsive. Left trigger, right trigger, you might as well put that down to 0 because as soon as you press that trigger it'll activate straight away. Now I'm pretty sure the rest of these are left on default apart from parachute auto deploy. I like to be able to get as close to the ground as possible before pulling out my chute. Obviously that helps me land faster, so I had that turned off. So again, that's just personal preference, but like I said, that's my reasoning for it, and if that's something you would prefer, make sure you try it as off. And everything else on this is default. Onto graphic settings, because they have added a lot more settings compared to the previous Warzone, so it is quite complicated. A lot of these settings I have taken off Twitter. A lot of optimizers have tweeted their settings, so I've basically gone through that and messed about with it a little myself. I am on a 1440p monitor with a 2070 Super with a 5800X, and I get about 100 frames, so that's pretty good, I would say. I'm pretty sure these settings are the best settings that you can use, so I just recommend copying them. I have dynamic resolution on because I always want to make sure I'm hitting that 100 frame rate. Obviously it does dip below there sometimes, so obviously having this on allows me to keep it consistent. Everything else default apart from custom frame rate limit. I like having this on. That should be at the maximum. I'm not sure why that's there. It's not like I'm going to hit 300 frames anyway, but in the menus and when it's out of focus I keep it on 60 FPS. This essentially ensures the GPU isn't running too hot, so when I'm not playing it's not running at the maximum amount of frames. Keeps the temps nice and cool, so I recommend having this on. The rest of the stuff here is on default. Now on the quality tab, I actually have my render resolution set to 90%. Like I said, I play on 1440p and I want to try and get the maximum frame as possible. Putting it down to 90%, I don't really notice all that much of a difference. I'm sure it looks a lot clearer on 1440p, but I want to try and get as much frames as I can with older hardware, and this works for me. So if you are getting low frames and you do have like lower specs, I recommend trying to lower this and see if you like it. If you don't like it, then unfortunately I don't think there's much else you can do. This is the only real option, so I recommend you try it. Again, if you want to try and get more frames, you can try the rest of these, but I think these all just look horrible, so I've stuck with Fidelity CAS. And obviously CAS with the combination of low render resolution, it looks okay. I like to keep my sharpening at 80%. Essentially this just sharpens the image. I highly recommend having this on because it just makes the game look way better. Anti-aliasing, I have it on SMA 2 times. I don't like to film it because that just blurs it a bit too much, so I'll keep it on 2 times. It just looks a bit clearer for me. Anti-aliasing quality on low. Video memory scale, I actually had this on 80, but after looking at a lot of people, they told me to put it on 90, so I put it on 90, but I've heard that can cause stutters. So if you do change it to 90, make sure you lower it back down to 80 if you are getting them stutters. I'll just walk through these settings now. Texture resolution low. Texture filter anisotropic normal. nearby level of detail low, distance level of detail low. These two are very relevant, I feel like, because you're not really going to be looking at the detail of stuff. Like say if you're running past a tree, does it matter if the quality is high or low? Not really. And I'm pretty sure it just gives you extra frames, so you may as well have them on low. But draw distance short, particle quality low, particle quality level low. I like to keep bullet impacts and sprays off because they're just a distraction. Shader quality low, tessellation off, terrain memory to the max, on-demand texture streaming off. Again, this was another setting in the original Warzone that caused stutters, so if you are having stutters, I'm not sure if it is like this on this game as well, but I'd try turning it off and see if that fixes it. Streaming quality low, volumetric quality low, off. All the shadow stuff I usually like to keep on low as well, because I feel like this really takes away from your FPS. So turn as much as this is off and as low as you can. So obviously I got shadow map resolution on very low, screen space shadows off, spot shadow quality and low, the spot cache size. So this essentially saves the shadows to your hard drive, so it makes it quicker to load, I'm pretty sure. So having this on high or medium gives you better FPS. Particle lighting on normal. I think in the original Warzone this setting basically called shimmering. So if you have this on low, your trees in far distances will start to shimmer and it causes all sorts of issues like visually. So I recommend trying this on high or normal. I have it on normal. Ambient occlusion off. Again, this takes a lot of frames away from your game, so I recommend having this off. Onto screen space reflections off. Again, this is the same as ambient inclusion, takes away from your frame, so make sure it's off. Low off. And NVIDIA reflex low latency, I would always put this on. It only ever put it on plus boost if your CPU is the thing that is causing your bottleneck, but it's very unlikely. I'm pretty sure the only setup that you can have where to have on plus boost is maybe the 40,000 series for the GPUs. Other than that, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be on. The rest of this is all turned off and down to 0. Now FOV, again, this is personal preference. I like playing on 110, some people like playing on 120. When you change your FOV, it actually changes your sensitivity as well, so keep that in mind if you are going to be messing about with it. But I like to play on 110. ADS field of view, this is effective, so essentially it keeps my same FOV as I have on normal when I'm aiming down sight. If you have it on independent, it lowers it to its original value, which is usually around 80, I'm pretty sure. So if you want less visual recall, effective is the way to go. Again, having this on wide instead of default and narrow, I'm pretty sure it gives you less visual recall, and your gun takes up less screen space, so it's just better to have it on wide. Third person view, I really don't play for third person, so that's just left on default. And then these two I would highly recommend putting it down to least. This obviously removes the camera movement that you get, which essentially lowers a lot of visual recall, and it helps with motion sickness and stuff like that, so I'd recommend having it on low. And the rest of these two on default. Audio settings. So for audio settings, I have it on PC. If you're not on PC, I recommend headphones or headphones based boost. From what I've tested, I actually think these three give you the best footstep quality and footstep audio, so I recommend using these. I have my volume on very low because I actually have it very loud on my mix amp, so having it low in game, again, this is personal preference, so whatever you want to do. I do recommend having music volume on 0 because you don't want any distractions while it's playing. The rest of this is relevant to you, whatever headset you're using, and I'm pretty sure the rest of this is on default. Hitmarker sounds, I play on classic, and yeah, rest of this is on default. Interface tab, I again don't think much has changed on this. The only thing I recommend is color customization. I have it on filter 2, and then this basically allows your game to look more vibrant, so I recommend you try that. And there's one more thing that I have changed on this, the vertical heads up display and horizontal heads up display. Put this down to 0, which basically means your HUD is close to the center of your screen, so your minimap is close to the center of your screen, and so is like your information on the bottom right, so that way when you're playing you don't really have to move your eyes all that much to the top left or to the bottom right to look at the information on your screen. And then these are the rest of the settings that I'm pretty sure are on default as well. And there we have it. There are all the settings in Call of Duty Warzone 2.0. And like I said, there is a lot of them. Hopefully this video helped you guys if you were feeling a bit overwhelmed. And hopefully it helps you get the best FPS as possible. And as always, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.